I don't think you can start talking about sex until you can start talking first about healthy relationships and what is a healthy relationship and what is consent. Because without understanding those two topics, it's hard just to jump into a conversation around sex.
Oh, great.
Right? Because sex still has to be a healthy, consensual part of your life.
Right.
Sure. I agree.
And for many, that's not the case.
Right. We were talking a little bit before that consent doesn't always look like, in Utah, you said, no means no, and everybody agrees with that.
Mm-hmm.
And yes means yes, and everybody agrees with that. But silence does not mean yes.
Correct. There was a big campaign in Utah, around no means no. And the point was to make sure that people were giving consent to have a sexual partner of any kind. But what happens sometimes is people freeze and they don't respond out of fear or being uncomfortable or not really maybe being in a position to consent. And instead of just waiting and saying, well, they didn't say the words no, so that must mean yes. Mm-hmm. We had to move to yes means yes. And so until somebody says yes, they're not consenting.
Right.
No means no doesn't mean yes. The absence of no.
No, I appreciate that. I think that a lot of times we get lost in correctness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we get lost in because it's something that's so not talked about. We don't even know how to move forward early on with what even is going on with us. And so when I went to the sexual therapist, what we talked about was biological levels of sexuality. Okay. And so because I am a man, I'm hit with certain amounts of testosterone every so often, right? Biologically, I'm wired to spread my seed. There's a biological effect to that. And without getting some help and being able to talk about like, okay, it's okay for me to want to breed and it's okay for me to want to love and working on looking at the spiritual part of sexuality with my partner coming out of such a dysfunctional world, right? Where everybody was kind of out for themselves sexually or otherwise. I had to learn that it's okay for me to want to have sex, right? Because it was for so long, I didn't realize that was the case. Mm-hmm. And even having sexual trauma and having things that I didn't necessarily agree with growing up, we can come out of that. And we had another person share their war story talking about this, but we can come out of unhealthy sexual relationships and still want to have sex and learn how to mm-hmm. have healthy sexual relationships, but I think it doesn't come without the conversation. And
I think it also plays into the fact that everybody's sexual appetites are different. And everybody has sexual desires and fantasies and things that they enjoy sexually. And instead of us shaming someone because they have a different sexual appetite or different sexual desires as maybe we have, it's just understanding that sex can be healthy in so many different ways. There's not a one-size-fits-all for sex.
Mm-hmm. There's not.
Well, and I think, too, like a lot of these lines of like, having the conversation about sex, I do think it's important because as we're talking about it, I'm thinking, back to myself in a number of different, situations I had in my childhood that were of a sexual nature that, I didn't recognize as good or bad. Like I almost just assumed it was all bad and none of it was natural because we were doing something that was so taboo. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's hard even now. It's like, well, is that just what kids do? Or was that like trauma? Like, was that, legit trauma that I experienced? Like, and I think that by opening up and having the conversations that we're having, like, hopefully we'll be able to determine, like what is a healthy relationship and what does healthy sexual appetite look like and what is the best way to, have that in a relationship and know where the boundaries are and what is good and what is bad and yada, 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 like through the nature of, talking about it.